In the UK, lawmakers have rejected the Prime Minister's request for an early election. Some 300 Parliament members supported the motion, but it still fell short of the two-thirds majority backing. Following the rejection of the vote, Prime Minister Boris Johnson criticised his opponents, saying the House cannot keep the country hostage any longer. Johnson called for early elections after he was forced to ask the EU for an extension to the Brexit deadline because his deal was rejected by the Parliament. The UK now has until January 31 to leave the bloc. The British Premier has called on the EU to rule out any more Brexit extensions. For more on that story, let's cross over to Tony Gosling, investigative journalist joining us out of Bristol in the UK. Mr. Gosling, the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, for the fourth time, I believe, third time that is, Parliament has rejected his call for an early election. First of all, what's your initial reaction to that? And are we expecting Johnson to make another call for a fourth general election?
Well, look, Boris Johnson has been rejected today under the Fixed Term Parliament Act, but he has a few more tricks up his sleeve. So we've heard today we're not leaving this week. We were supposed to be leaving on Halloween on Thursday, and we've been granted this 3-month extension, which is half as long as the previous extension by the European Union. So, in a way, what we're seeing is an attempt by Johnson to use different methods to get a general election. Obviously, Parliament is blocking Brexit. We've got 2 election dates, potential election dates, which he may be able to negotiate with another opposition party, the Liberal Democrats. So he may be able to get that one through. And also, he's after a specific act for one act just to get an election on so that's the 9th of December. And also the 12th of December. The 9th is the date the Lib Dems want, and the 12th is the date the Tory party wants. And it is just possible he may get either one of those. So he's still got a few tricks up his sleeve. But the problem here is we've got this political paralysis, which has been caused by the inability of Parliament to allow Brexit to happen, despite various deals or a no deal. So they're playing games. This is what's happening. And I don't think this is going to go down well with voters. This is the Labour Party, the opposition party. The problem that Labour have got is that if there is an election, and when there is an election, 2/3 of their target seats here in Britain are Leave seats, so where most of the people voted Leave. Look, we've already had 3 elections or 2 elections and a referendum based on Brexit, and all 3 have come out to varying degrees pro-Brexit. So right. The people definitely want it to happen. We had a referendum in 2016. We also had a general election in 2017, and earlier this year we had European elections. So we really don't want to have another election. But that's, it seems, is the only way to get Parliament to reflect what the British people actually really want.
So, Tony, do you think there's still a real prospect that there will be a general election in the UK before the end of the year?
Yes, I think it's quite feasible, particularly because the Liberal Democrats want a general election because they believe, wrongly in my view, but they believe that they can get people to vote for them to have what they call a people's vote, which is really just another name for a second referendum. But as I've just said, the various elections and the referendum in 2016 have all come out with a pro-Brexit result. So the British people clearly want to have a Brexit. So I don't think that the Lib Dems are going to do too well with all that. The Lib Dems, by the way, it was that brought in this Fixed Term Parliament Act, which today we've had this vote which demanded a 2/3 majority. But Johnson has got the possibility of getting a general election. There are a couple of possibilities on a simple majority still. So those are the next tricks he's going to be trying later this week or next week.
Now, Labour have rejected the Boris Johnson's call for an election. Why do you think that is? If the Labour Party would... If they would go for the elections, if they would govern the country and maybe deliver a Brexit that would suit the British public, why is Labour opposed to a general election?
Well, because by all the polls, they're now down to only about a quarter of the vote. They should be up to 50% in the polls, but they're not. They're around about mid-20s. So the reason they don't want a general election is very simple, because they would lose that general election and Jeremy Corbyn would end up with egg on his face, and that would be the finish of his political career. He's clinging on.
No chances of Jeremy Corbyn forming a coalition with the Lib Dems and the other smaller parties?
Well, that's very difficult. As I said, 2/3 of the Labour target seats are Leave seats. So really, Corbyn should be leaning towards Leave if he wants to win that general election. He's doing the opposite. In fact, many of his front bench spokespeople are absolutely 100% Remain. They don't want any Brexit at all. And that is effectively suicidal for the Labour Party. So he's trying to avoid a general election at all costs.
Tony Gosling, investigative journalist, joining us out of Bristol. As always, thank you very much for your contribution.